Hello everybody, Crow back again with our pickups video. This is pickups video, all the stuff that I picked up at the Midwest Gaming Classic, which was actually last weekend. I'm filming this Thursday night. I hope to get this video up Friday or at least by this weekend. And it's actually way earlier than I thought I'd get this video up because I thought it would take me a lot longer to get through all these games to play them and get some footage from. But I managed to spend almost most of the day Sunday doing that. But before I actually get to the games that I picked up, I did pick up from Pinball Life, just to show off really quick here. Pinball Life had a booth there, so I picked up these 5 pinballs just to have extras. I saw this, I was like, hey, I don't have this. It's a pin guard rubber cleaner. Just picked that up. These were $5. These balls were like, they're highly polished, so they were like $1.25 each. And I just picked them up to have extras. And then I picked up, I saw this. I actually opened up the bag already to check it out, and this is a Stern ball shooter lane kickout protector. It's just kind of a piece of metal to screw into. I'm going to screw into the Star Trek machine here, so when he ejects the ball out, it doesn't really damage the wood. Not that it's really damaging the wood. I just think it's such an easy thing to install. 2 screws, it's in. So yeah, I just picked that up. And now we'll get to the games. I did pick up most of the stuff I picked up here were Japanese imports. But before I do Japanese imports, I'll do the US games that I got. First one actually couldn't get to work. And I don't know what it is about Sonic Adventure, but I cannot seem to get a working copy of it. When I was going through my games last year to figure out what I wanted to sell or not, I was testing everything, and my copy of Sonic Adventure didn't work. So now that I had updated my database, I realized, hey, I never got another copy of Sonic Adventure. Well, when I go to Midwest Gaming Classic, I'll see if somebody's selling a copy and I'll buy it, and I saw it at a booth. I picked it up, and when I got home to try it, it would not boot. Now, it does have some scratches, so maybe if I buff it out, it'll work. I may actually go to Disc Replay, get some other stuff I want to buff out. I'll put this in I'll give this to them and see if it works. I don't know. I've heard that some of the early Dreamcast games were pressed not very well. So after a little bit of time, they stopped working, and this may be the case. I may have to find myself another copy of Sonic Adventure. That's why you're not seeing any footage of it. I couldn't get it to boot. But luckily, and again, this was it was marked $15. Now, before I go any further, I want to say that I'm going to say what the prices were marked. It's not necessarily what I paid for them. I did pay a little bit less for this because I did get some other games with it. But I'm just going to say whatever the price was marked on it for individual. Because I did buy a couple of these by themselves for the price marked. But I don't really remember exactly which ones those were. Except for one. When I get to it, I'll see which one it is. But yeah, this copy of Sonic Adventure I bought didn't work. But luckily, what did work was, this was a game I was looking for a while. I'm trying to rearrange. I got Post-it notes on everything. Gunbird 2, I've been looking for this for a while. I know some people have found this for a decent price. I bought it for $50. Well, this was one of the things I bought with Sonic Adventure, so a little bit less than that. I was like, I'm not passing this up, and it was the only copy I actually saw at the show. I did see a copy of Gunbird for the Saturn. I was thinking about it, but by the time I went back to that booth, it was gone already. But I played this originally at the Video Game Summit, not last year, but the year before, and I was like, that was the first time I heard about this game. So I was like, I gotta get myself a copy of the game, and I never saw it again. I mean, I could have bought it on eBay, but I didn't want to. I would have probably eventually, but since I had it in mind and I saw it at the Midwest Gaming Classic for $50, I figured I'd pick it up, and I do not regret it at all. This game is kind of this game is awesome for a shooter. It's very quirky, and I like that kind of thing. A quirky shoot 'em up, right up my alley. So yeah, I played a little bit of that. It was $50. I mean, I know some people are like, hey, we got ripped off, but you know what? I don't see this that often. Even on eBay now, when I look, I really didn't see that many copies of this. So I'm glad I got it when I did, and I'm glad it works too as well. While we're talking about Dreamcast, might as well show this off. As I was leaving the vendor area, I saw this. It was one of the things I had in mind to get. Dreamcast, the official Dreamcast arcade stick. by Age Tech, I guess. This is what you see all the time. I was thinking about buying this online, and I thought to myself, no, what if I go to the Midwest Gaming Classic and I see it there? And I did, and it was $90. So I just bought it straight out there like that because, yeah, what are you waiting for? Anyway, I just bought it straight out because there's a lot of fighting games I have on the Dreamcast, and all the shooters, at least the Gunbird. I was playing this with Gunbird. It was great. Works really good. Nice clicking noises. The buttons are okay. It actually doesn't have any discoloration or anything, so I figured I'd get it. And I did pay $90, but I don't regret it, because if you go online, you might be able to get it for around the same price, but at least I didn't have to pay for shipping or anything. Sometimes I see this going for even more, but just to have it right now, that's great. And actually, this next game here, moving on, is one of the games I had in mind. Actually, I was looking for this game specifically, and it took me quite some time, but I found it. Ridge Racer Type 4. Now, the reason I was looking for this game was because of, in my last pickups video, I showed the Joy-Con controller. Controller I found out from when I was entering in games on my database, and I happened to notice Breakout used a special controller, and I looked it up, and it was a Joy-Con controller. And originally, the Joy-Con controller was released with Ridge Racer Type 4. So naturally, I am kind of a fan of the Ridge Racer series. I do like the games in the series. I had Ridge Racer, the first Ridge Racer. It was one of the first PlayStation games I had, or at least played. I don't remember if I had it right off the bat. But Rage Racer I had. I don't know what about Ridge Racer 2. I meant to look that up, but I didn't. I don't think I had the second Ridge Racer, if that was even on PlayStation. But Rage Racer I had. But when the time this came out, I didn't get it, and I don't know why. Maybe it was just released really late in the PlayStation 1 life cycle. I don't know. It says 1998. That doesn't seem that late. I don't know why I never bought it. But it's a double wide case, and played it with the Joy-Con controller, and it's great. It's really something, because that dial in the middle has force feedback and self-centering and everything. It works. It's like a little mini steering wheel. It's really great, and it's a shame that more games don't use it. I only popped in the first disc of this. The second disc says it's a bonus turbo mode, and I don't really know what that is. But it was really nice. It has the manual. This was the only copy I saw. I actually saw the Japanese version of this first, but it's like, no, let me wait and see if I can find the US version, because I would have rather had that. It was marked for $6.95, which is not a bad price for this at all, I think. So there you go, Ridge Racer Type 4. This is the last US release game I bought while I was there. And it's actually a very last thing I bought, because I remember I was taking a final trip through the vendor area with very little money in my pocket, and I saw this, and it's Moon Patrol on the Atari 8-bit. And this was the only thing I had to look up in my phone to see if I actually had or not, because I couldn't remember if I had it for the Atari computer. Now, the reason I had to get this was because, well, I didn't have it, that was for one. But I used to have Moon Patrol on the Atari 5200, but then I sold off all the 5200 stuff. So I didn't have Moon Patrol anymore, and I really like Moon Patrol. This is exactly like the 5200 version, except you get to play it with a better controller. But it's complete in box. Now, I don't think it was factory sealed, but it might as well have been, because everything in the box looked like it was brand new. The manual, I think there was some extra paperwork in there, and the cartridge, not a mark on them. So it's a really fabulous box in really great condition too. Not that I really care that much about getting boxes. This was either $9 or $10. I can't remember. It says it had a price for $9 on the back and $10 on the front. So I think I paid about $9. But because it was like, hey, you know what? You got two prices on here. But yeah, I was really tired by the end of the day too. So who knows? Maybe I didn't even notice the 9. Who knows? Whatever. It's a great game at either price. So moving on. Let's go with the rest of the stuff is all Japanese stuff. Now, this is kind of what I was keeping an eye out for, because I don't really know that much about the Japanese games. To me, it's like a grab bag. I look at the cartridge, and to me, it takes me back to the old days, where you look at the cartridge, you look at the picture, be like, does this look like the kind of game I'd like? And then you take a chance on it. And some of these I did really good on, and some of these I was like, I wound up buying games I couldn't play. But actually, we'll save this for no, we'll show this thing off now. By the way, I meant to mention, but that Dreamcast arcade controller was the most expensive thing I bought while I was there. This was the second most expensive thing. Windy Gaming, I wound up buying a Super Famicom. Now the reason I bought the Super Famicom is I didn't have any Super Famicom games. But I was going through the booths, and I wound up buying a couple with thinking that, well, I could take a spare Super Nintendo and kind of file down the tabs to make the cartridge fit, and that'll work. But then when I got to Windy Gaming's booth, I was like, you know what? I think they have Super Nintendo, or Super Famicoms. And I asked, and I said, hey, how much are you selling Super Famicoms for? And he goes, well, $50 for one that's not so good condition, but works, or $60 for one that's in a good condition. So I was like, yeah, give me the one in a good condition. So, you know, it's not the greatest of conditions. I mean, it looks, I mean, physically, it's great. It's got a little bit of yellowing in the back, but it's not too bad. So I'm happy with it. The only problem was, well, here, you'll see what the problem is. He gave me the AV cables for it, which is same as the US ones. He actually gave me a Super Famicom controller to go with it, which I was really pleased with because I didn't think it would come with that. It didn't come with a power supply. And I'm like, huh, okay, so it doesn't come with a power supply. He said, oh yeah, use a NES adapter, regular NES adapter, that'll work. And I was kind of looking it up online, and I've heard that it will work, but it's not the greatest thing to use because the NES AC adapter actually outputs AC instead of DC. Supposedly the Super Famicom could handle that. But I went further, and I went looking in further, and it turns out that the Sega Genesis Model 1 AC adapter also works with this. Not only is the voltage correct, and it has a slightly higher amperage rating, but the polarity on the tip is also correct. So I used the Genesis Model 1 controller to test out these games that I wound up buying, and it worked great. Now, I did already go online and buy an official AC adapter to go with this. What was it, like 20 bucks or something like that? I just wanted one to go with, an official one. I didn't want to be using a Genesis adapter for this, but yeah, I'm really happy with that. I always liked the way the console looked. I mean, I think, well, here's what's really funny, is I like the way the console looks better than the American version. But I know a lot of people say they like the Super Famicom controller compared to the US Super Nintendo controller, but I actually like the US Super Nintendo controller a little bit more. I just like the I don't know why I like the purpley buttons. The other difference is that all of the buttons on this controller are rounded, convexed, whereas on the US Super Nintendo controller, these two buttons are concaved inward, if I'm using the right terminology. You know what I mean. So it feels a little bit different. Not too different, but I do prefer the US controller, both in feel and design. I don't know. I'm not too keen on the multiple color thing here, but you know, that's just me. The other thing I thought was kind of funny, I guess it does say on the lid, use cassette with Super Famicom mark only. I thought that was kind of weird. But I was actually looking for Super Famicom in big letters elsewhere on the system, and it just doesn't say it. It's just got that symbol on the corner. So I thought that was kind of weird. So, since I got a Super Famicom, you already know I got Super Famicom games. Let me see if I can find the ones I bought first before I bought the Super Famicom. Actually, I bought all these before I bought the Super Famicom. But these were the ones I saw first. This one I bought, it was marked at $4. It is called... I had to look all this stuff up beforehand. Of course, you could tell this was a Japanese-only release. It was called Pachinko Monogatari Pachi Slot Maru Deo. And I got it because I thought it would be like a pachinko kind of thing. I'm kind of curious into the whole pachinko video game thing. So I got that thinking that this was, and there's some pachinko in it. You start off in this elevator lobby, and you go all up and down the building. I think you have to play the game in order to gain access and do certain things. I did play a little bit of the pachinko, kind of interesting. It seems like the kind of game that they designed to make you play more and more to get more and more access to more things. So it was kind of interesting in that respect. Got $4. I just take a. It was one of those games I took a chance. This was another game I took a chance on. Bing Bing Bingo. Again, another Japan only release. This one was marked $5. Interesting thing about this one, there's actually six or seven games in here. 3 of them are mini games, and they have nothing to do with bingo. They just play these weird mini games against either the computer or another player. But then the other games are bingo related, and you have to play some kind of weird game for them to call out the numbers. And then you have this bingo card, and it's bingo. So the main game is bingo, making them call the numbers different ways. There's a slot machine, there's a guy skydiving. It could take pretty lengthy, but it's actually pretty interesting. One of those games I took a chance on. Kind of glad I took a chance on it. I like how I covered up the picture with the Post-it note and then showed you. Now this game, I actually have a very similar game to this, and I bought it because I bought that similar game. This is Super Wagyan Land for this. Pause. All right, had to pick that off the floor. So again, this was another Japanese-only release. It looked like from the picture that it was going to be a side-scrolling game that I'd never heard about, and I'm kind of a platformer in it. I was kind of right. Yeah, side-scrolling platformer, but the bosses, you have to beat the bosses with like puzzles, and since the puzzles are in Japanese and they use more or less Japanese-styled games, I really had to fumble my way through it. In fact, I don't know how I beat the first boss. There's like a panel patching game, panel matching game, and it's not like memory, but it has something to do with like you have to match the last syllable of the word with the first syllable of the next word. It's that kind of game, and that is the main reason this is like a whole series, and that's the reason why this series never really made it outside of Japan. But I took a chance. It was $5. This was actually at the Windy Gaming booth. So actually the rest of these I think I picked up at the the rest of them except for one. So I picked it up at the Windy Gaming booth. It was marked at $5. I took a chance. Kind of glad I did. I'm going to keep it in my collection for now. Here's another one I took a chance on. This is literally called From the TV Animation Slam Dunk Yankyo Taiketsu. And it may look like a basketball game, and I was like, I took a chance on it because I had a feeling that it was not going to be your average basketball game, and that it is not. I guess it's based on an animation series called Slam Dunk that I'd never seen. But I knew something would be different about this, and it was $3, so I picked it up. And I was right. When you play the game, there's a story mode, and you have to progress through the story mode. It's not just a basketball game. It's more like basketball game. It's like quick time event, the basketball game, basically. So you basically run on the court, and every time something's going to happen, you have to play a little quick action game. It kind of reminds me of Slam City with Scottie Pippen, whereas you have to judge the animation, hit the button at the right time, that kind of deal. So it is kind of like everything is like cutscenes with this basketball game. So it's all pretty interesting. So I'm glad I got this. It's really interesting. I'm gonna keep this in my collection for a while at least. Next up, I bought this game solely on the name. So again, at Windy Gaming, it's marked at $8. This is Hokuto no Ken 6, and what's the subtitle on this one? Gekito Denshoken Hai Heno Michi. I guess if I wrote that right. Again, Hokuto no Ken, one of my favorite animes, so I picked this up. It turns out this is a one-on-one fighting game, but a very bad one. Yeah, this game isn't very good. Really took me a while to figure out what was going on. The controls are not very tight at all. Animation's pretty sloppy on it. But it is Hokuto no Ken, so I had to get it. I'm still going to keep it. It's not the greatest? Is it the worst? It might be the worst Hokuto no Ken in my collection. Uh, I mean, and I'm even counting like the Fist of the North Star for the NES. Black Belt, which is a conversion of a Hokuto no Ken game. What's the other one? Last Battle on the Genesis. Those are all superior games to this. But yeah, like I said, if I had to buy it again, I probably would. In fact, this is 6, and I know that there's a 5 and a 7 on the Super Famicom, and if I ever run across those for a pretty cheap price, I'd probably buy them too. I would actually like to see the Famicom ones too. I think the other 4 are on the Famicom. I think I have 2, and 2 is actually the Fist of the North Star we got in the U.S. What am I thinking of? Oh, when I looked up 5 looks like it's even an RPG. And even though I wouldn't be able to play it, I probably still would buy it if I saw it. That's how into Hokuto no Ken I am. Moving on, Windy Gaming Booth. This is the most expensive Super Famicom game I bought at their booth. This is Chao Genjin 2, otherwise known as Super Bonk 2, a game that was only released in Japan. So I knew this was Bonk, or PC Genjin, or Chao Genjin, or whatever you want to call him, Bonk. I think Genjin is kid, right? So this would be like Super Kid 2 if you took a literal translation. But yeah, I played a little bit of this. It's a great game. Probably the best game I bought at the Windy Gaming booth. Well, best Super Famicom game. There's a whole stack of Famicom games coming up here. Ooh, that's a preview. And I don't know. This was probably the best game I bought at the Windy Gaming booth. So, yeah, you're Bonk, and it's got that very TurboGrafx 16 feel to it, or really, it's really the Bonk game series feel to it. And he's got these weird, wacky power-ups now. Too bad that the Super Nintendo controller doesn't have a turbo switch. I might have to get a gamepad with a turbo switch so I could do the rotating thing like you could with the TurboGrafx 16 controller. So maybe I'll, now that I thought about that, the ASCII pad with the turbo switches. I don't have one like that. I actually have... Shh, I'm talking. I actually have an arcade stick that has that, but I don't think it would work. It would feel the same. So I might have to keep that in mind to get a pad with a turbo switches on it for this game. So yeah, I played that a little while. It was a pretty fun game. Now this game, this is the Japanese version of the game. Everybody's familiar with it. Again, this was at this weird booth that they didn't have much games, but everything was marked really cheap. Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And of course, every region has a version of this game. I just thought for $3 it would be a good game to pick up for the Super Famicom, just because, just slightly different with that Japanese writing all in it. And, M. Bison is Balrog, and Balrog is Vega, and Vega is Bison. All that switch up. I always kind of wanted a Japanese version of Street Fighter 2, and this was a great price for it, I think. So those were all the Super Famicom games. So while we're talking about Famicom, let me put these over here. The only bad thing about the Super Famicom games compared to Super Nintendo games is you can't really stack them that well, because the fronts are beveled. So when you move this table I have here, they kind of wobble back and forth. They don't sit perfectly flat. Still, like these Famicom games I'm going to show off. Let's see, and again, these are all in a random order. If I remember the booth that I got them at, I'll say. Again, I think this was at that weird booth I bought the Street Fighter 2 Turbo at. This is Star Luster. Now, I picked this up because it looked like... it reminded me of a Intellivision game, in fact. But there are other games that reminded me of. It was a Namco game. It was marked at $4, so I was not going... And it's in really good condition. It's got a... the front is in really good condition. It's even got the front label here, and it's got the thing on the back. Cartridge is a little bit scuffed up, but what are you going to do? And I actually like these Famicom cartridges where the cartridge is molded with the name of Namco in the corner. I think that's pretty cool. But anyway, this is a game where you pick your destination, you go there, and then you fight. It's pretty... it seems pretty complicated, and I don't understand what I was doing wrong. I did fight some enemies, I shot them some down, but I couldn't figure out where I needed to go or how to fight anybody else. It kept telling me I was losing stars, and I didn't know how to save them. But I'm sure if cursory look on the internet, or even just keep constant playing this game, you'd figure it out. It's not that difficult. So it's pretty cool, and I'm glad I picked it up. It's going to stay in my collection for sure. One of the games I'll be more likely to go to. This next one I knew was a shooter, so I picked it up. This is 18Apr2014, which is a really cool name for a game. Unfortunately, this game isn't that great for a shoot 'em up. It's a really early Famicom title. It was released in Japan before the Super Nintendo was even released in the U.S. Released in Japan before the NES was released, and that's, of course, it was released before the Super Nintendo was. This is just Japanese-only release, and I think I know why they would not have brought this over to U.S. is because the sound is terrible in this game. The action is very choppy. It's not very good. It really isn't, but I do like shooters, so I did get this. Actually, I like the cover. I like the name of the game. The best thing about this game is that it's called Exit X's, because it's a really weird name for a game. That's the best thing about the game. But I did pick up worse. So let's move on. Now, of course, you remember I showed off Super Wagon Land. This is the original Wagon Land. A Namco cartridge, because this is embroidered with Namcot in the corner. It's marked at $6. You know, I wonder if it was supposed to have a label on the top now that I look at it. Probably was. That's missing. It has stickers on the back, which is why I almost didn't pick it up. But somebody at the booth that was also looking at games told me it was a great game, so I picked it up. And, of course, it has the same problem Super Wagon Land has. And that's that to fight the bosses, you actually have to solve word puzzles. And they're Japanese word puzzles, and that's mainly the reason this series never came to the U.S. is because it was kind of hard to convert that kind of gameplay. I'm sure if I really think about it, I could solve some of these puzzles. Again, especially if you're picking a word that starts with the same syllables that the last word ended in. I'll have to think about it. I was just guessing, but then I looked it up, and I found out that's what you're supposed to do. Yeah, it's really unplayable, I think, unless you really know Japanese, or at least a cursory understanding of Japanese. Of course, I might be wrong. I may be playing the game completely wrong, and it is possible if you don't know a lick of Japanese. But let's move on. Next game actually is not a U.S.-only title, but it is named this only in Japan. That's Lunar Ball. In Europe and U.S., this is known as Lunar Pool. It's a game I don't have in the U.S., and I just picked this up because I really picked this up. It's $3, so it was really cheap, and I was really curious. It's like, Lunar Ball. I wonder if that's the same game as Lunar Pool. And sure enough, it was. I'm sure I could have looked it up on my phone, but that spoils the fun of finding out what it really is. So I popped it in, looked it up. Yeah, this is Lunar Pool, but it's called Lunar Ball. So basically, it starts out looking like a regular billiards type game. Once you get to the next table, everything starts getting weird and disjoint. It's like it's not normal pool anymore. It's more of a puzzle type game, and I actually like it. It's actually a good concept for a game. So this will stay in my collection, even if I do get Lunar Pool for the NES. Now I need to drink. This game was actually quite a surprise when I played it. Saw it. It's Warpman. And I like Warpman. I never heard of that game, and I looked in. It's got the actual graphics from the game on the cartridge. So, and it's made by Namco, and it's $4. So I'm gonna buy it and take a chance. And I played it, and this was probably the biggest surprise. This game is really enjoyable. Don't know why this was only released in Japan. This is it's kind of like how do I put it? It's kind of like Wizards of War. Kind of reminds me of, but without the confining mazes or the map or anything. You walk around, you shoot enemies, but then you pick up power-ups like a landmine. You can walk into the black hole in the middle, work to different spaces. You have to, in order to progress to the next level, you have to kill a certain amount of enemies. So I don't know how I did it, but I got landmines. What's funny about the landmines is when they detonate, you can't be in their range, otherwise you die too. But then I somehow managed to get my my gun to a point to where when it hits an enemy, it kind of explodes on contact, and if you get caught up in that, you also die. So it's actually a really cool game. I like it. Might even make a video on this one someday in the future because I really do like this game. It's very simple, straightforward, and I highly recommend this game. I really do. I really like it. I don't know why we've never heard of Workman here in the States. So that's I can't overstate how much I like that game. Next game, I knew what it was. In fact, but I didn't even know if I had the U.S. version of this. This was released in U.S., Japan, and Europe. This is Boulder Dash. Boulder Dash is, you know, it's funny. I want to say it's one of my favorite games, but it's also one of those games I barely played. I haven't played this at my cousin's house on their computer a long time ago. And ever since then, I always say, I like Bomberman, even though I barely only made it past the first level. But I just like the whole concept of running through the maze, and well, it's not really a maze. Well, in some cases it could be, I guess. But trying to make the boulders fall so they don't fall on you while you're collecting the diamonds, trying to make sure you don't trap yourself. I thought that was pretty cool. This is the Japanese version. I don't have. It turns out I don't have the U.S. version, so this was $10. Oh, I took it. I say I took a chance. Like really, the chance I took was that I didn't have it, and I didn't. So that's Boulder Dash. Let's move on to the next one. I saw this and I was like, this seems like it would be interesting. This is Tetris for the Famicom. Didn't know which version of Tetris this was, and it turned out it was a version I didn't even know existed. This is the bulletproof software version of Tetris. So this is really between the Famicom and the the Famicom and the Nintendo, the NES. This is the one of 3 versions of Tetris that came out. There's this one, the bulletproof software version, there's the Nintendo version, and then there's the Tengen version. Now, you guys have to correct me if I'm wrong, but looking up on GameFAQs, it seems like this is the only version of Tetris, aside from sequels, that the straight-up version of Tetris that was released on the Famicom. Because when I look up the Nintendo version of Tetris and the Tengen version of Tetris, those don't seem like they had a Japanese release. So, so I played this. This is actually the first version of Tetris to come out on any Nintendo Famicom system, and it's easily the worst. And I'll tell you what it is the controls are all messed up on this. You would think that you move left and right to move the piece, and that's still true. And then down, if you press down, that would drop the piece, and pushing the buttons would rotate the piece. But those controls are screwed up. They're mixed up. And when you hit the button, that drops the piece, and when you push down, that rotates the piece. So I kept screwing up playing the game because I wanted to rotate the piece, and I'd accidentally drop it, or... Wow, that was weird. He made a weird noise. So I kept hitting down to drop the piece, and it would rotate the piece. So, interesting to have this. I'm going to keep it, just because it's such an odd version. It was only $4, but I'm not going to play it that much. It's actually got some of the same music as some subsequent versions of Tetris. But, yeah, it's very plain looking. It's, I guess at the time it was okay. I've played plainer versions of Tetris. If you ever played the Commodore 64 version of Tetris, whew, it's kind of plain. Yeah, the controls kill it. I don't know what they were thinking with the controls. When you push down and the piece doesn't go down, and you hit a button and the piece just teleports to the bottom. It doesn't even gradually fall down. It's at the bottom. It teleports to the bottom. It's not a good version. While we're talking about Tetris, I got this Tetris Flash. I didn't know which version of Tetris it actually was. It's like, odds are this was released in the U.S. as something. And I was like, I'm not sure which one this is. And it actually was released in the U.S. and actually just in the U.S. as Tetris 2. This apparently had no European release, though. Again, I'm going off of GameFAQs on that information. Interesting twist on Tetris. It really bothers me that they even bothered to call this Tetris, because it really doesn't follow the same concept where you're making lines disappear. Even the blocks that you're dropping have more than 4 pieces in some cases, if I'm remembering correctly. But the whole point of this is to match up the colors and make the flashing pieces disappear. When you get 3 in a row, I think it's 3 in a row. Why not 4 in a row? That would make more sense for Tetris. But 3 in a row, you make those colors disappear, and your whole goal is to make the flashing pieces disappear. When you do that, you move them on to the next level. It actually reminds me a little bit of Dr. Mario, if I had to compare it to anything. So it's actually kind of cool. It's just kind of weird that saying Tetris. And it's always seemed that way to me. Moving on. Next game here we bought. You didn't buy it with me. I bought it myself. City Connection. This is a game I really never played, but I've seen videos of it, and every time I see a video for this, I'm like, I bet I'd really like that game. And this was released in all regions, but I never had a copy for the U.S. So when I saw this for $3 at some table, I don't even remember what table this was at, I had to get it because I was like, hey, that's cheap enough. It's a Famicom title. So I picked it up, and what you do is you try and cover the entire highway. And when you do that, you move on to the next level. But then there's cop cars in the way, or other vehicles in the way. There's cats in the way. You can attack them with oil cans. But you can't attack the cats. And I always find this game hilarious when you hit the cat because everything just stops and the cat slowly flies away while this weird music plays. It's pretty funny. I actually think that's the funniest. I like that part of the game. So if I hit a cat, I'm not too bummed out that I lost a life because just that whole sequence is really odd. So yeah, City Connection, $3. Jalico, even got Jalico imprinted in the cartridge case. I really like that. I wonder how come they didn't. Probably cost a fortune to do that nowadays. Well, I say nowadays, but after the Famicom days, to actually make your own cartridges with your company logo and printed in it. Yeah, whatever. I do like how these Famicom cartridges are all different colors instead of just gray. I also like how small they are, too. There's really no reason that the NES cartridges we got here needed to be so big, but they got the same ones in Europe, too. But anyway, this next game was one I took a chance on because it looked like a pachinko game, and I was right. This is Pachinko-kun 2. So it's a sequel to Pachinko-kun. And you basically play as a pachinko ball roaming around a pachinko parlor, I guess. You talk to people, and if you're me, you don't know what they're talking about. But you can go to the pachinko machines and play them. So I did that. And that's pretty much all I did in the game. I just got it just for that reason. $3. I just wanted to see pachinko games. In fact, I didn't even know. Well, I should have known that there were pachinko games on the Famicom, but I was really more interested in finding them on the Super Nintendo, just because it seemed more of a capable system for that kind of thing, with all the balls on the screen and stuff. But this, very interesting that they turned it into sort of an RPG where you're a pachinko ball. So let's move on. Next game. I actually got this because I was talking to somebody at one of the tables, and I was like, I'm interested in Japanese games that never came out in the U.S. And they were like, oh, this game never came out in the U.S. And he pointed to Donald Duck. And I was like, oh, Donald Duck, I bet you this is some kind of platformer. And it was $8, but I picked it up because I was like, hey, a Disney game in Japan that was never released in the U.S. What do you get? So I picked it up, and then I looked it up, and it turned out I knew this already, and I just had plumb forgot it. This was released in the U.S., but it wasn't released as Donald Duck. This was released as Snoopy's Silly Sports Spectacular, a game that I actually used to have that was bought for me by 8-Bit Goomba. But this is the original version, and it has Donald Duck and Disney characters in it, and the U.S. version has the Peanuts characters in it. So, I'm kind of glad I bought this, just because it is a Disney game that was released in Japan. Actually, yeah, it was just only released in Japan with the Disney characters, and this didn't even have a Japanese. Yeah, of course, it had a Japanese release. I'm holding it right here. It didn't have a European release either. So you basically have 6 events, most of which I didn't know what I was doing and fumbled right off the bat. So if I'm talking too long, you're going to see the footage repeat over here. Yeah, I know. You're waiting for me to finish. Don't have to be snooty about it. So yeah, it's only got 6 events. It seems kind of like a short game, not that many events or whatever. But yeah, I guess it is the NES days. So I don't know. Let's move on. This game I bought thinking it was another game, and it turned out it wasn't the game I thought it was. This is Ultraman Club 2 Kite Kita Ultraman Club. And I thought this was a side-scrolling platformer, beat-em-up kind of game, and I was completely wrong. This is an action... No, actually, it's not even an action RPG. This is just an RPG. So I couldn't really play it. I could fumble my way through it, but I have no idea what anybody's saying. I have no idea what I'm doing. It's kind of cool that they made at least one RPG. This is the second one, so I guess this is the second in a series of Ultraman RPGs, where he's like a chibi, super deformed thing. But I saw the label, and I was like, Ultraman, I gotta get that, thinking it was a different game, and it turned out it wasn't. Paid $4 for it. So damages are not too good, too great. But I may wind up selling this because I can't play it. I don't know Japanese. So move on. Bought this game because it looked like a shooter, and I was right. This is Gaimos, a game that was only released in Japan. This was $4. Very early Famicom release, and it's not that very good. It actually looks like a game that could be done on ColecoVision. In fact, that reminds me of Buck Rogers' Planet of Zoom. And you basically just fly through choppy, alternate color scrolling grounds to make it look like you're moving. And you guess the height and the location of where the enemies you are going to shoot at. You shoot at them, and that's pretty much it. Not much to this. It's a lot like Buck Rogers' Planet of Zoom, except not even that complicated. Well, you know what? It is a little bit different. You do have ground. You have to fire at the ground targets with bombs. So it's kind of like... if you took Buck Rogers' Planet of Zoom and put in an element of Xevious there. So I guess it is a little bit upgraded. It's really not that impressive. Like I said, it looks like something the Intellivision could do. Not the Intellivision. I'm sure the Intellivision could do it too, but this looks like a game that could have been pulled straight off the ColecoVision. So Gaimos, I'm going to keep it because it is a Japanese-only release and it is a shooter, but it's not that impressive. But for $4, it's okay. Now this game I was kind of really misled. It's by Konami. This game is called Racer Mini Yonku Japan Cup. So naturally I thought it was some kind of RC racing game. And it's not. It's actually a board game. But an interesting board game. It actually almost seems like a precursor to Mario Kart. Or even Fortune Street. Where... Well, they did have Fortune Street on the Famicom. But... you basically, I didn't play the game. I let the computer play it for this footage. But, because you could set up everybody as a computer player and let it go through. But you basically go through the board game and I think you build and upgrade a car. And then you set a certain number of turns. And at the end of everybody's like 20th turn or 50th turn, or however long you set the game at, you do a race and you get all the upgrades and everything. And I don't even know if you control the race at the end, but then, you know, obviously the better you've made your car through the whole board game, the better chance you have of winning. This is all speculative, by the way. I think that's the way this goes. There are some mini games that looks like you play for landing on certain spots on the board game. So it's pretty interesting. I think I'll keep it just because of that concept, but... not the game I was thinking. I also like how it's got a top label on here, too. Anyway, that was actually all the Famicom games. I do have 2 more games here. Picked this one up at that random table. I picked up the Street Fighter 2 and the other Famicom games. This Turbo Duo game, or really a PC Engine CD game called Magical. And it was like $4. So I was like, I really don't know what type of game this is. And I may not be able to play it if it's in Japanese or I need to read Japanese. But I picked it up for $4 and it was like almost brand new. It seemed like it had even have the spiner and everything in there. Turns out it's an action RPG. So even though while I may not be able to understand what the people are saying in the game, I could still probably fumble my way through the game because all the action is done like that in action. You walk up and you beat the zombie on the head, which is what I pretty much did this game. And you can pretty much see where you need to go next, kind of talk to people and see what happens, and even though you might not be able to understand them. So yeah, there's that one. And then finally, this is the last game. I bought this at Windy Gaming. It's another PC Engine CD game. Again, this game was only released in Japan like Magic Coal. I like how Magic Coal is spelled like coal instead of coal. If that makes any sense. Whatever. This is Bomberman Panic Bomber. And this was released in Japan only. This version of Panic Bomber was released in Japan only. There have been other versions of Panic Bomber, and most of them have only been released in Japan. But the one I remember is Panic Bomber that was released on the Virtual Boy. And this game really does not belong on the Virtual Boy. You need colors to play this game, or at least to enjoy it. Because it is very color heavy based, where you match up colored heads, and I think they disappear. Wow, I can't even remember now. But yeah, the bombs fall, you make the bombs detonate, and you clear out things. And it's a puzzle game in that vein. And I saw this, and I knew what it was, even though I couldn't read the game at all. I knew this was Panic Bomber. And I was like, I always wanted Panic Bomber for some kind of system. I think there's a version on the Super Famicom, too. But I know the version we had was Virtual Boy only. Anyway, that's all the pickups from the Midwest Gaming Classic. I actually have more stuff coming on the way. There's some more stuff. Like, I'm gonna have to find another copy of Sonic Adventure. And I'm probably going to see if they have it at Disc Replay. And if they don't have it at Disc Replay, I'm probably going to... they didn't even have a copy of Video Games Etc. last time I went. I couldn't even believe that. This should be a common game. Why can't I find it anywhere? Or at least a working copy. So, if I can't find one at Disc Replay next time I go, like I said, I'm going to have to buff it out first. So, I might have to take 2 trips there. I was looking at an auction for one, and I was going to bid on it. It was going to end tomorrow morning. And bidding was not very high, but then I read the description, and all I need is the disc. I have the case. But it was for disc only, and then it says, oh, it's scratched up, and it's not been tested. Well, that sounds to me like it doesn't work. Anyway, yeah, that's all the MGC pickups. I already got some stuff on the way that I ordered. I can't remember. Oh, I remember one. So I already got stuff coming in for the next pickups video. So this was just solely MGC, Midwest Gaming Classic. Thanks everyone for watching. See you next time. Bye.